Hello, this is MARCO LUZZATTI. Welcome to this presentation on 2 to remember for simpler, better problem solving. I work at Greenville Technical College in the Economic Development and Corporate Training Division. I am a trainer, program manager, coach, Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt trainer with years of experience in a multitude of problem-solving methods. What I hope to share tonight is some of the pitfalls that even experts fall into, and out of all the methods, which 2 we should remember that we can use on an everyday basis to avoid pitfalls and also to coach and help others be better problem solvers. So I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you. Maybe I'll try talking without the mic, but is it better with the mic or? Okay. So usually I can project without the mic, but this is a fairly large room. So appreciate you guys having me. Two local professional groups. That's a great honor. When I saw the crowd here, I thought to myself, they must have booked a second speaker, because clearly these guys wouldn't show up for me on a cold night like tonight. But so I do appreciate you guys coming out. I'm going to be talking on 2 to remember for simpler, better problem solving. Hopefully share some of my insights with you folks around problem solving. If you pull any of the top 10 lists for the critical job skills in today's market, you'll find problem solving is either number 1, number 2, or number 3. So it's considered a critical skill for new hires, for existing employees. Plus some other things like the ability to work in teams, the ability to do critical decision making, things of that nature. All of us deal with problems, right? You do, your organizations do, your employees, your coworkers deal with problems. I would say, and this is a tough topic to talk about because there's probably a lot of experts in the room in problem solving. So, I'm going to give you my spin on it a little bit. I'm going to step out a little bit and step out on a limb and tell you the 2 methods that I think everyone ought to have in their toolbox, regardless of how you do problem solving. And I'll share with you why, and the years of experience working with a multitude of methods. But I will say, I am a Master Black Belt trainer, but the more you learn about problem solving and process improvement, the more you realize you don't know, and the more you can forget. And partly I'm going to hopefully share with you a little bit. Sometimes we forget to do problem solving even though we know it. We maybe don't do it particularly well. In addition, while we all do problem solving, I would guess that many of us struggle to do it well. Many of our coworkers struggle to do it well. I work with organizations that the entire organization struggles to do it well. So I'll share with you some of my insights there. Maybe you'll have me back at another time. I'll talk about some other things related to like how to get more problems solved in less time. I don't have time tonight based on what I was asked to talk about. Hopefully I give you a different perspective. My favorite quote on problem solving, and I don't know if you guys know this, but we are the best problem solvers in the world in the US. The best. Better than the Japanese, better than anyone else. We're so good, we like to solve the same problem over and over and over again. So if you're in that boat, welcome to my session. We're going to talk about why that is, right? And maybe I can give you a perspective. Hopefully you pick up a few tips. We'll have a little fun at the same time. and how can we simplify and maybe improve our problem solving. Maybe give you a little reminders and some other things. So what we're going to cover, I don't know where to stay, maybe over here. What we're going to cover is just a little bit standardizing in terminology. I'm going to use some terminology throughout the session, and I know some of you understand the terms, some of you may not, but I just want to quickly cover some of those. Begin to get into a little bit some pitfalls and shortcuts that we tend to take, good and bad. And as I said, some reminders and tips. Then I'm going to go out on the limb and tell you the 2 problem-solving methods you ought to have in your toolkit for dealing with simpler, complex problems. You likely already know them. My job, I'll introduce you to them. If they're new to you, you'll pick up on them. But you probably know these already. But I would say they're underutilized, and we ought to use them a little bit more than we do. And I'll give you some examples of how we should use some of these things more. The other thing, if you are an expert, we ought to be coaching and training others around us to solve problems, big and small. So I hope you can take these, insights and use those to help others solve problems better, but make it easier for them. Okay? And just to give you a sense, I've had 2 companies in the last 6 months call me. They've got new younger workers. They don't understand process, they don't understand problem solving, and they're wanting to give them foundational training in some of this, and we teach them some of this stuff as well. So again, very important to help develop the younger workers as they come through. So here's some situations, different situations. Someone walks into your office with a problem. On the spot, how do you respond? Maybe you have a quick conversation with an employee about a problem, root cause is apparent, and you want to implement a solution. How do you approach it? Do you do it in a structured way? You're trying to solve a recurrent quality issue. How do you approach it? Maybe you're firefighting at a machine. Maybe you're in maintenance or something like that. How do you approach the problem? You're dealing with a customer complaint. Maybe you're leading a 5S event or a quick changeover. How do you approach it? Wouldn't it be nice if we could approach it 1 or 2 different ways and deal with all these situations? So that's part of what I'm going to share with you, as well as tie in some pitfalls. So just to standardize and spend a few minutes here, just to get some terminology down. This is us in the present. We can look to the past and talk about problems we're having. We can look to the future and talk about problems we've never occurred yet. I'm going to focus more on the left side tonight, dealing with problem solving, process improvement. But in terms of terminology, if I go to the doctor with a headache, runny nose, fever, chest cold, and the doctor says, "Here, Marco, here's some medicine. You should feel better in 24 to 48 hours. What kind of action has the doctor taken? What would we call that?
Containment.
So I hear corrective, I hear containment action. So those of you that said containment action, that is the correct. So we call that containment action. Why? Because I'm dealing with the symptoms and effects, not the root cause, right? So containment action, reactive action, correction. Those are kind of internationally used words around problem solving. Now the doctor says, "Marco, if you get the flu shot this year, it will prevent recurrence of this flu that you got because it just so happens to be in the flu shot." Preventing recurrence of a problem is what kind of action? Preventive. Wrong. Wrong. Wishful thinking. That is the definition of corrective action. Action to prevent recurrence of a problem you've already had by attacking the root cause or causes is corrective action. So all of you that are filling out your corrective action forms, if you're not getting to root cause or causes, you're probably doing containment action, not corrective action. You know, I can spill oil, clean it up, that's containment, but preventing that oil from spilling again, that's corrective, okay? Now, I could give some other examples around preventive and containment, but just in the interest of time, I'm going to focus more on the left side. 90% of the corrective actions I see, and I see a lot of them, are actually containment actions. Okay? So just to standardize, we're going to talk about problems today. Now, there's all kind of problems we could, you know, I've got a decision to make. That could be a problem. That's not what I'm going to be talking about tonight. I'm talking about things where there's a deviation from the norm, something's changed or no longer works, there's a gap, maybe a nonconformance or a nonconformity, we're not meeting a requirement. Those are the kind of problems that I'm going to be talking about. Also going to be talking about opportunities and improvement actions, where you're taking a good process, maybe you're making it better, making it more efficient, maybe making it leaner. So in the middle, containment or reactive action or correction. I'm going to refer to containment action throughout the presentation. Actions to minimize or eliminate the symptoms or effects. However, when I take containment action, a lot of times it involves things like inspection. We're going to inspect stuff and put in pokey-okes so things don't get to the customer. That's still containment because the problem can reoccur. Corrective action, actions that reduce, eliminate problems by preventing recurrence of one or more root causes. The two approaches I'm going to talk to, we don't always utilize, but we can use them for both corrective and containment actions. And sometimes containment action, as I'll give some examples, actually requires some type of root cause analysis, if you will. You know, if you think about it, car makers can't prevent accidents necessarily. They're working on it, right? But they do a lot of containment action to minimize the impact of accidents. But that requires sometimes a lot of root cause analysis and other analysis and thinking. So even containment or reactive action can involve some analysis. Okay, so I'm going to refer mostly, well, I'll refer to all of these as we go through the presentation. So we say there's two types of containment actions along what I was talking about. Known containment actions, we know what we need to do, and those that are unknown, where we have to do some investigation. So an example would be the example of the doctor I just gave, right? Go to the doctor, maybe I don't need corrective action. I just need medicine to make me feel better. Or to deal with, you know, the pain in my stomach or something like that. When you take your car to the shop with a rattling noise, what are you interested in? Corrective action or containment action? Probably interested in containment, right? Customer complaint. Well, a lot of times customers don't care about corrective action, why it occurred. They just want you to fix it. They want that containment action. And there's the automaker. So we're going to talk about both types, but where we can use some of this problem solving root cause analysis stuff is when we have the unknown causes and actions. The doctor still has to investigate what's causing the pain. The mechanic still has to do some root cause analysis as to the rattling. Okay? So I want to talk a little bit and get you guys involved a little bit. So to start out, I got a little exercise. See if you guys can do higher order math. We'll find out very quickly. So I've got three numbers up there, 1, 3, 9 in sequence. There's a pattern. Can you tell me what that pattern is?
Multiplicative.
Okay, what can you tell me what the next number is going to be then?
27.
Not 81. 27. Why? 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Times 9. That's how you got 27, right? What's that?
Could be 10.
Could be 10. So maybe. So if you've seen it, maybe you've seen this before, right? If you've seen it before, don't answer. You're not showing you're smart. You just know you've seen it before. All right, but so Actually, the correct answer is not 27. It's not 18. Now, well, I say it's not correct. 27 is a correct answer. 18 is a correct answer. So is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. The pattern in this case was the number has to be bigger than the number before it. Now, you guys just stumbled into one of the pitfalls we all have with problem solving. We see something, a problem, and we instantly know what the answer is. And then we go gather information to support our answer. There's a name for it. We call it, actually, they call it confirmation bias. We jump to a cause, we jump to a solution, and we gather information to support that. We all do it. It's human nature. You guys are expert problem solvers, and I guarantee you most of you fell in that trap. What would a good problem solver have done?
I don't have enough information.
Right, and you should have started asking me questions, okay? You know, is it multiplicative? Is there a pattern multiplicative? You know, could it be any number? What's that? Does it have to be a whole number? Could it be a fraction? Good problem solvers start with questions, not answers, okay? So you guys fell into that trap. I'm going to test you later as well, so be on your toes. So what are some typical problem-solving pitfalls that you guys see out there in your organizations around problem solving? Throw some of them out to me.
It's always the way we've always done it.
That's the way we've always done it. So let's keep, there's no better way, even though there's always a. Love it.
There's the right way, the wrong way, and then the Clemson way.
Yeah. Oh, the Clemson way. You forgot the other way. My way or the highway.
Well, that's my way in the classroom.
Okay.
Thinking there has to be only one root cause.
Right. Assuming there's one root cause. You know what tool assumes that? That everyone says they use for problem solving? What's the 5 whys? 5 whys works great when there's one root cause. Doesn't work well when there's many. But when we start using 5 whys by itself, we're assuming there's only one. Great. What other pitfall?
Always concluding human error.
Yeah, that it's always a person's fault, right? Sure. And then we say the corrective action is to go train the employee, right? That's not corrective action, right? So that's usually containment. Yeah.
Gather facts.
Failure to gather facts. Yeah. What do we do? What is the typical problem solving that we do in our organization?
So we've seen it before.
We've seen it before. Yeah, we make assumptions and we do what? We jump to cause and we jump to solutions. You hold a team meeting, a problem solving, people are going to come in, they say, look, we need to do this, this, and this, and it'll solve the problem. Well, you know what my response to that is? If that were true, we'd have fixed it already. So slow down, slow down, and let's talk about this. Because if we really knew the cause and we really knew the solution. So there's organizations here locally, some are in this room. Sorry if I'm talking a little bit out of it. I won't mention names. But we set up rooms where we gather managers and we throw out a problem or we have an issue, and all of a sudden people start throwing solutions out. And it's like a fire sale. Hey, Matt, that sounds good. Go do it. That sounds good. Go do it. We love to jump to solutions. We love to jump to causes. Any other? Can you give me one more? I mean, there's probably 30. Oh, okay. Trusting the data. Big data, it's all about big data, right? But if the data's bad, how many of you do Pareto charts? Raise your hands. Pareto charts, right? Love it. Have you ever tested whether people are putting things in the right categories? I have. Do you know what the answer is? No. Because we don't have good definitions. And if they don't know, where do they put it? The other category, which is why it's your biggest category. Or what if it goes in 2 categories? So, and we base our prioritization and decision making off of this stuff. So yeah, sometimes I analyze a lot of data for folks. I would say I'd have been fired from tech a long time ago. David, don't fire me, but if I just start analyzing data, because a lot of times it's not worth the paper it's written on, to be honest with you, in the way it's collected. I know a guy worked 3 months. He was working 3 months on a problem for China. They were collecting some data for him. He went over to get the data in China. Within 5 minutes, he knew the data was bad. And he lost 3 months of time on his project, right? So a lot of pitfalls. And we'll talk about some of these a little bit. And by the way, I think ASQ makes these things available. I'll make this available to you guys, so don't worry about taking detailed notes. And I think I'm being videotaped, which I'm okay being videotaped, but I prefer not to be videotaped. But because everything I say, usually I can say, hey, I didn't say that, but now Anyway, believe it or not, and I'm going to prove this to you, one of the biggest pitfalls we have from the get-go is failure to find the problem from the beginning. Believe it or not. Put 5 people in a room, they all have a different view of the problem. Lack of time and impatience, resulting in skipping steps. We're going to jump to root cause, solution, because we don't have time. Suppliers, customers, I mean, the numbers are staggering right there. You want corrective action in 24 to 48 hours. You want corrective action in, you don't do corrective. You can't even form a team in 24 hours to do 8D or one of those other tools. So true root cause analysis takes time. So we skip steps, we jump to cause, we jump to solutions. I talked about action overkill. If we throw enough solutions on the wall, and I see problem statements that they're just a list of tasks. Do this, 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 and this. If we do enough of these things, one of them is bound to work. What's the problem with that?
Make things worse.
Sometimes it makes things worse, and if it works, we don't know what did it. So now we're stuck doing everything, right? So we've all been there, right? Another one is improperly presenting and justifying causes and solutions and actions. So I had a manager, he was talking to me about 2 of his supervisors who was getting ready to fire his supervisors for poor problem solving. And I said, well, tell me about it. He said, they didn't come up with the right root cause and solution. What he's really telling me was they didn't come up with my root cause and solutions. And because of that, I'm going to fire them. I said, I happen to know a little bit about what they were doing. They did a really good job on problem solving. What they didn't do a good job is explaining it to you. They didn't tell him all the root causes they considered, including his root cause and all the solutions and why they picked the root cause they did and the solutions. So again, part of having a structure, though, is making sure we do that and avoid that pitfall. They didn't get fired, by the way. But I told them, look, go talk to them a little bit more and find out why they didn't pick your root cause and your solution. The number one issue, believe it or not, is even if we solve the problem, a year from now we may not sustain the gains. Training a company, I've been training 8 hours all day, believe it or not. Here I am training a little bit more. But you know, the company was talking about all the new employees they've had and managers and stuff. And they had a task. Maintenance thought quality was doing the task. Quality thought maintenance was doing the task. And the task was just not getting done. But we make improvements, but a lot of times we fail to sustain the gains, particularly with a lot of turnover and other things. So even if you're the best problem solver in the world, I would hesitate to guess you take a lot of shortcuts and fall into the pitfalls. Why? Because you have experience. You've seen these problems before. You think you know what to do. You think you understand the current process. Okay? So here's the necessary elements we say for problem solving. Time and resources. That's for another discussion. Bring me back, I'll talk to you about how to solve more problems in less time. Management understanding. Management does play a big role. I'll offer free training when we do problem solving to managers to help them understand their role and how they can be a key cog in successful problem solving and process improvement, or torpedo things. Well, you mentioned data, information, and facts. We have lots of tools and techniques, depending on your level of knowledge, everything from 5 whys up to design of experiments and beyond. But where I'm going to focus is structured approach. What can we use for simple or complex problems that is structured? So we start by saying, what are the approaches you might use out there? What approaches do you use for problem solving? A3, fishbone, AD, Kepner-Trago. Yep, KT is Kepner-Trago for those that, any others? FMEA, interesting. Yeah. So I put a list together. It doesn't include FMEA, but it could. But I would argue tools like FMEA, fishbone, could be problem solving, but these are more tools for root cause analysis. It's not going to help you necessarily define a problem 5 whys or take the action. Certainly FMEA has parts of it built in. But AD, corrective action forms, you guys do those. RCA, maybe for safety. Enhanced, there's a plan, do, check, act. This one's a 9-step plan, do, check, act, build stuff in a plan. A3's there. There's lots of stuff out there. Some of these are tools. We got Lean, Six Sigma up there. And I've experienced just about everything out there is, probably used almost everything out there, and kind of had an aha moment this year of sorts. It's like, you know what? They all have the same core elements, and we'll talk about what those elements, I'm going to ask you what those elements might be in just a little bit. But we break down problem solving and improvement at Tech. We simply break it down into 3 areas. One of them is, to solve the problem, you need to design a new product, a service, a new process. That's going to be out of scope of this talk. We're not going to focus there. Okay? We might have to improve an existing process where we have unknown root causes, factors, even waste if you're lean practitioners. Unknown solutions. May require a little investigation and commitment of time and resources. We also, though, have to recognize that there are times we can just have go do it problem solving. With a little investigation, maybe talking to someone, the root cause, solution, it becomes apparent, and we just need to go do it. However, we have to make sure these are low risk, low cost, easily reversible. And usually I say, takes 2 weeks or less. But if it's high cost, you better slow down and make sure you're doing things in the right place. Because I can tell you, I work with a lot of companies, they jump to the solution, they want to spend money, and it doesn't work out for them. Had one of our major government agencies, the problem they were working on was automating this process. Well, first off, that's not a problem, that's a solution. And I said, what's the problem? And they told me about it, and I'm like, wait a minute. So they're producing errors, and I said, let me get this straight. You're going to take a bad process, which he said was bad, you're going to automate it and produce errors at a faster rate. I said, that's our government at work. That sounds, but you come into a team meeting, people come in with their solutions, what do they want to do? Spend money. We just need to buy this, we need to buy that. But that's not low cost. You better slow down and make sure you're putting things in the right place, otherwise you'll make things worse. So I'm gonna talk about an approach we can use for go do it, structured approach we can use to improve existing processes. And those will be the only 2. You can use them with A3, 8D, you can integrate 5 whys, whatever you're doing, you can use these as the structure. So how do we evaluate these best approaches? Well, one, are they structured? Can they help us avoid some of these pitfalls? And I'll show you how we might do that. Are they flexible, as I mentioned? Can we use them for corrective action and containment? Can we use them for simple problems as well as complex? Do they integrate with other methods? And my number one criteria that I've kind of come to a high is, are they easy to remember? Okay. How many of you do 8D? All right, can you name the steps in order for me? Ed says he can, maybe he does them a lot. What's step number 1?
Form a team.
Form a team, right? You know, step number 2. So now if you deal with a lot, but the average person's not going to, and when I do a class, everyone uses 8D, but no one can remember what it is hardly. A3. Do you remember all the segments of A3? If you say yes, you might remember yours, but there is no standard for A3 problem solving. Everyone creates their own A3 approach, if you will. So, you know, after experience dozens, I mean, I've seen 4-step, 5-step, 7-step, Kepner-Trago, you know, Shannon, you name it, I've seen them all. They're all good if you follow them. Many of them have weaknesses that you just have to be aware of, but I'm not knocking any of these approaches. I think there's some good in all of them. So, let's focus on the go-do-it problem solving first. I'm sure all of you have heard of this technique, but do you use it? You probably heard of it, but do you really use it? So the one we're going to talk about, you can use it for go-do-its, containment, or corrective. May require a little investigation, not a lot. We can attack waste or root causes if they're known, put in solutions if known. Easy to implement and reverse. These are the criteria when we should use this. You can use it for FMEA and other things. And we can use it for iterative problem solving, and I'll touch on that just a little bit. But down at the bottom here, one of the challenges I think with problem solving is we should be getting every employee thinking about solving problems and making improvements every day. And this is a subject for another talk, but there's companies that get 70 to 100 employee ideas per year with a 70 to 90% implementation. Can you guys say that? You know, that's pretty astonishing. But there's, you know, even some local companies that get that kind of response. And this method works pretty good in terms of giving a structure for this type of stuff. So, you know, there's a sort of a body of knowledge around how to make this happen, out of scope of this training. But I do like to throw it in because we can use this technique. So what is the recommended approach? Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, study, act. How many of you have heard of that? Every day, okay? But how many of you really use it? Everyone knows it, but how many of you use it? Now, number one, can you remember it? Yeah. I'll bet everyone knows what it means. So we can remember it. That's my number one criteria. Plan a change or test aimed at improvement, right? We know the cause, we know the solution. Maybe it's containment, okay? I put my password in wrong. Do I have to launch an 8D? No, but I might have to think a plan. I might even do plan. Okay, wait a minute. Let's plan this again. So even something like that. What's that? Well, that's true, right? Maybe. Well, I'm only interested in containment action, though, in this case. It's a go-do it, right? But you may have a situation, I'll run into things where there's a problem, we had a problem, and I'll go say, and Michael, I'm going to pick on you because you're right in front of me, okay? Michael, hey, this happened, what was going on? And you and I talk, and I find out, oh, I didn't give you the information that you needed to do the process right. That's a go do it. From now on, I'll make sure I give you that information correctly. And I'll tell everyone in my department what you need. You know, so what's the plan? You know, what are we going to do? Who's going to do what? Where? When? Doesn't take very long. But what's going to be our measure of improvement as well? How are we going to know it works? Well, hopefully, in this case, the problem doesn't recur. We're going to do it. We're going to see if it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's the check. What went well, what didn't. We sometimes, and I'll point this out, I'll point it out next, sometimes we want to carry out a test of the solution, a pilot. Because if it doesn't work, we want to fail on a small scale, not a big one, right? And then we want to act. Do we have to adopt a change full scale? Do we have to change it? Things along those lines, okay? Maybe we need to abandon the change. So very simple, plan, do, check, act. Again, known root cause, known solution, low risk to do it or to try it, see if it works. I'll often say that they'll say to me, oh, this will never work. I got a company Friday I'm going to. This will never work. Would you try it for one day? Would you try it for an hour? Sometimes you can get them to pilot it on a small scale, okay? It'd be nice if we documented some of this stuff. We actually do a lot of plan, do, check, act all the time, but we lose track of it. It could even be in a simple Excel spreadsheet, all the small improvements. And a lot of times what we're doing here is small improvement. It's quick, it's easy, but we don't think about it as improvement. And even so, we may not use a structured approach. So I'll come back at the end and say, one of my recommendations to you guys is if you have good go do it's with yourself and people, are you following plan, do, check, act? Because if you're not, you may be skipping some things and it may come back to haunt you. And I'll test you on it a little bit. So what do you use when a little more analysis is required? Well, so that's this middle approach. We need to do root cause analysis. We need to analyze the process. So we say, if you actually look at all the methods out there, they have some core elements. If I have to do problem solving, what are some of the things I need to do? Where does it start? I have to do what first? Define the problem. And we've already said maybe we don't do that well. What's the next thing?
Measure.
Well, measure. What does that mean? Tell me what you do. Tell me what you do.
Record.
Ask questions.
Okay, so what we would say is you gotta, one, understand the current process, right? Maybe baseline the current process. You know, what's my measure of success gonna be? Like plan, do, check, act. Okay? So you're probably gonna do those things first to help you do the third thing, which we like to jump to a lot of times, which is what? We got to identify the root cause, or cause is. Okay? So we identify, here's what else we do. We tend to jump to a cause rather than identify all the possible root causes. So the first thing we should do is go big. Lots of root causes, and then where are we going to focus in on? Okay? Once we have the cause or causes that we're going to go after, for better or worse, we're going to have to do what now? Put in solutions, take action, take corrective action, or sometimes just containment action. Okay? Now, if we do all that and the actions work, are we still done?
You gotta implement.
We got to fully implement, and so a lot of times we like to identify the solutions and we recommend piloting them. Then we got to follow up, right? Make sure it works, and then make sure it stays. Yeah, you can clean your garage, but do you keep it clean? You can clean your kitchen, but do you keep it clean? Now, if we take those elements, and some of you guys were headed there, it kind of deals with a method that we can all remember. Okay, what is that method? Well, again, we want it to be flexible, easy to remember, structured, integrates with other methods. The one I found that meets these criteria that we can all remember is DMAIC. How many of you heard of DMAIC? How many use it when someone walks into your office with a problem? Why not? It's easy to remember. What do we tend to do? They come in with a problem, and what do? Jump to solutions. You know DMAIC, but you don't. I had a guy, he told me, his boss came to him and said, why don't you use DMAIC on this problem? He said, oh boss, it's not complex enough. I'm like, what? If it works for complex problems, why can't you use it for simple problems? So I said, you need to go apologize to your boss because, yeah, we all know we can bring in and DMAIC in itself is fairly simple. It's the tool set that we're taught along with it that gets fairly complex. So throw that out. So what is DMAIC? Well, you know, we have to identify the problem. Define the problem, right? What's the problem? Someone mentioned measure. What does that mean? Baseline and understand the current process. You shouldn't be making changes to the process unless you understand it first. And how do you know the improvement was actually an improvement if you don't have I see whole projects launch without a clear measure of success. We had a team at Tech work 5 months on a project. They presented to management, and management said, well, that's not what we wanted you to do. Then they called me in to fix it. I'm like, well, you didn't give them a measure of success. They made up their own, and they met their measure. Analyze. What are the root causes? If you're doing a lean project, what are the wastes that we go after? Improve. Once we've identified the causes or wastes, let's put in the solutions. Let's identify them and test them. So a pilot. Had a physician's office that was telling me about a prior improvement they had with 17 doctors, and they said they had a glitch, and the doctor said that's it. The improvement, we're done, no more. And I said, well, if you'd been working with us at the time, we would have said, hey, let's test it with one doctor first and get all the glitches out. And once we do that, let's go and go to full scale. So we actually, for improve, we say identify and test the improvements if you can on a small scale. Then go to full scale implementation, and so implement and put in the controls to sustain the gains. Most of you probably have been trained in DMAIC, but do you really use it every day? I would argue you can use it for any problem that comes your way. Okay? So, and I would say the minimum to remember is kind of on this slide. Now, I told David I was going to put him to work. So I've got a sort of a simplified DMAIC checklist. Okay, and we don't believe in roadmaps and flowcharts. I'll tell you why in a second. So we'll get you a copy here. And by the way, Plan, Do, Check, Act that we just covered works very well in the improve phase with DMAIC. So here, yeah, we can use, here's DMAIC to solve a complex problem with all the big tool set. But again, we can use it to solve simpler stuff as well. And yes, it works with the complex stuff. I'm not here to teach you the complex DMAIC or the tool set. Okay? But if it can solve the complex, it can solve the simpler as well. One thing people don't realize, 8D, DMAIC, whatever. In fact, I had someone say to me yesterday, do you guys provide flowcharts for 8D in your training? I said, absolutely not. We will never give you a flowchart for 8D. Why? Because it implies you've got to do stuff in certain sequence. That's not how problem solving works. If you're doing 8D, you got to form a team, right? What are you doing before you even form a team? Probably containment action. Where's that on the form? Step number 3. Okay? It should be step number 0, but it's not. Okay, so that's the reality, right? Okay, very good. So problem solving, we're often doing things in parallel. You might actually have your baseline data before you even define the problem. Maybe that's defining the problem. Once you get your measure of success and at least a baseline, you don't wait to the improve phase before you start implementing solutions. If you can see a quick hit action, you take it once you've got your baseline. So problem solving, you know, we're often doing phases. You're getting an understanding of the current process, but you're also determining root causes. While you're getting baseline data, you're segregating the data into categories maybe to save time. So 8D, any of those approaches you're using, anyone who gives you a flow chart or a roadmap or whatever, I mean, do you really follow that thing in sequence? What we believe in is checklists. So that's kind of what you have, is a checklist, which means do these things, you just may not do them in that order. And when can you take containment action?
Whenever you need to.
At any time. Down at the bottom, that's what it says. Containment action can be taken at any time. Why? Because that's the reality, right? Protect your customer. Absolutely. Yeah, they don't care what you're doing. They just don't give me bad stuff, right? So the other thing is DMAIC may proceed like this. However, remember we talked about justifying your problem solving to others. DMAIC tells a great story. So you may do an improvement early on, but you present it in the improve phase. Isn't that the way your 8D and corrective action forms and everything else are? You don't necessarily do things in the order in that form, but you present them in that order because it tells a good story. Can you remember what DMAIC is? So when you go present to management, what do we like to tell them about first? This is our great solution. How about telling them what the problem is? You guys present to me problems to me all the time. I'm like, stop. Could you please remind me what the problem is we're trying to solve before you get into all this tools and everything else you did? Just what's your key? I like to know two things right up front. What's your problem? What's your key measure of success? How am I going to know you were successful? After that, we can talk about anything you want in any order. Okay? But that's why forms and templates are often created. So they allow us to tell a story, even if we don't do things in that order. So people will present solutions to me up front, like after the problem definition. I'm like, you know, that's like if you read a book, that's like someone saying, here's the ending of the book. Go read the rest of the book. I mean, no, you told me what, you know. So again, we want to tell a story. DMAIC can help us do that. Now, we recommend a pre-assessment before you go in. Just think about it. Is the problem worth your time and effort? Is it even worth talking to an employee about the problem? Can you do it? Go do it. Is the solution known? Be careful. Just because someone thinks it is doesn't mean it is. Do we need root cause analysis? Do we need slow down? Do we need to form a team? Do we need containment or corrective action or both? You want to think about that a little bit. Now, I'm going to run through these slides, but I'm going to focus on the top. I'll hit a couple of the pitfalls and maybe some of the solutions. Again, I'm providing this for your reference. And maybe before we get into this one, let me give you a problem statement. Or let me give you a problem, and I need a problem statement from you guys. I'm going to stand in front of this. A golfer's playing golf. He hits the ball, walks down the course, and stops in dismay. His ball has rolled into a paper bag that someone had left on the fairway. Okay? He can either hit the ball out of the bag or take the ball out of the bag. If he takes the ball out of the bag, he will get a penalty. So tell me what the problem statement would be. I don't want a solution or anything. And by the way, I know all of you guys are jumping to solution. Here's what he should do. No, what is the problem?
Ball's in the bag.
A litter on the course. The ball is in the bag. That sounds like a pretty good problem statement, right? Wrong. Okay? You come to me with that problem statement, I'm kicking you out of my office. In fact, I've done that to a major company recently. So remember we said one of the pitfalls is we fail to define the problem. Okay? We jump to cause and solutions. Maybe we don't even involve the right people. And by the way, whose perspective are you taking the problem from? The golfer. What about the golf course? What is their problem? The litter on the course. They're probably going to do corrective action. What's the golfer interested in? Containment action, right? Yeah. So there is a solution there, but we're not going to get to that. But if you are doing proper problem solving, you look at the first step to find the problem, you should say who. We know the who, right? The golfer. Do you know the when? What day it was? What hole it was? Maybe he was just pitching in his backyard, right? Maybe it was a major tournament. Who knows? What's the impact of the problem? Why is impact important? That's to get other people interested in our, I would argue that's the number one thing. Why should we even work on this? Who, what, where, when, the how much. So we talk about the 5 W, H, and GS. But that's not our nature. Okay? We think we can just say, hey, the ball is in the bag. Who's going to jump on that? You know what I'm going to say to you? So what? Why should I care? So give me more information, okay? Get me interested. Plus, we're getting the perspective often from one employee. Employee comes into your office with a problem. That's their view of the problem. We jump to solutions, and we don't get other people's point of view. All right? Another big problem is scope. I'll touch on that briefly. But the other thing I will say, and I like to focus on this one because it is a big pitfall we skip over, is people come in and they say, I got a problem. We need to do this. What should we be saying? No? That's a solution. What's the... Yeah, or they say, we need to do this because, and that means they're giving us a root cause. But we're all over it. Or, we need to do this, this, and this. That has nothing, we call those disguised causes, solutions, and tasks. You're not a good problem solver if you start jumping all over that. Okay? What is the problem? So, I'm not going to cover this, but the golfer issue, not a good problem statement from any of you that I heard. But you should have said, give me more information about the problem. Okay? So, we got a contrast here about getting information. But I will say this one's not good because it's not scoped. It says all locations. We got an inventory issue. That's a disguised root cause. It's got a lot of issues with it, even though it's got more data. We also like to solve problems in chunks. This is a tip. We tend to try to solve world hunger when we should break problems into smaller chunks. I had someone yesterday telling me, we sat in this office to improve this training and we got 25% through and we gave up. And I said, yeah, I would have given up too. But think about it. If you'd taken one module, this is 10 years ago they did this. I said, if you'd taken one module 10 years ago and started improving it, and then another month you took another and another, guess what? 10 years from now, here you'd be sitting, you'd have a world-class training material. We make a change to every training, I do anyway, to every training program I do. There's something different about it every time out. Okay? Measure is understand and baseline the current process. Okay? And we do have some pitfalls there. We talked about it. I'll focus on one thing. We recommend one key measure of success. If you have more than that, there's a good chance you have a poorly scoped problem. We recommend focusing on one process at a time. If you don't, you've got a poorly scoped problem. And what are we all short on? Time. Yet we like to take on world hunger again. So these are some of the things we can deal with. We also fail to understand the current process. So I'm going to share a situation briefly at Tech, and then I'm going to move sort of towards the end. But someone walks into your office and says, we have a problem. We need to do this. So this happened in an organization. Supervisor went to the manager with a solution to the problem, not the problem. We need to do this IT solution. The manager said, oh, I have a problem that this will solve, a different problem. I like this solution. I'm going to go to IT and make it happen. She doesn't go with the problem, she goes with the solution. IT says, oh, the vendor just told me I have to implement this solution to make this update to my IT. I like this solution, so let's put it out to the organization. It's rolled out in a memo. 2 days it's going to take to make this IT change. 16 to 20 hours. And the memo says the manager has approved this change. Well, the employees get this memo and they're like, this makes no sense. What problem is this trying to solve? And oh, by the way, it's going to take 2 extra steps now for us to do the work. So one employee pushes back and says, what is the problem? Goes and asks each of the individuals, what is the problem they're trying to solve? What's the current situation? What's the impact of the change on others? Okay? So what do we find out? Well, everyone jumped, or what did they find out? Everyone jumped to solutions. Okay? Now, the supervisor turns out, well, I'll come back to them. The manager turns out the solution won't fix her problem. After the current situation is investigated. Okay? The IT person says, well, yeah, when it's confirmed, yeah, it's going to take 2 extra steps, but the vendor told us we need to make this change as part of our IT system. Calls the vendor only to find out the vendor had sent a memo to this organization by mistake. The update didn't apply to their IT system. It was an outdated system. So that wasn't needed. And it turns out the supervisor hadn't been trained properly in accessing the information they needed from this system. Okay? So they jumped to solution, failed to define the problem. They had 3 different problems, failed to understand the current process, and actually failed to consult those who do the work. How many times does someone come into our office and we jump to a solution? I sat with a VP and I said, you know, we tend to jump to solutions. Has anyone ever said to you before, you don't understand the situation? You put a solution out there and they push back and say, you don't understand the situation? She said, well, yeah, I hear that all the time. Yeah, so what does that tell you? So they canceled the change and trained the supervisor. Just failing to do the first 2 steps, defining the problem and understanding the current process and a key measure of success. They didn't even share the same problem. Jump to solution. Okay? Now, the next step, analyze, verify, and select root causes or waste. I'm going to kind of skip through it, but we have pitfalls. We jump to solutions and other things. And on the left, we'll have some best practices. But the most important thing, actually, and I'm going to test you at the end, by the way, is I'm going to ask you what define, measure, analyze, improve, control mean. Very simply, analyze is identify, verify, select the root causes or wastes. Improve is identify, select, and pilot your solutions. Could be containment, could be corrective. We tend to get tunnel vision on one solution. Remember the 1, 3, 9? We get tunnel vision. We fail the pilot. We want to spend money. We throw solutions over the wall. So again, if we follow DMAIC, hopefully, and some of the key aspects of it, we're going to avoid that. And if we do problem solving right, we're going to give others confidence in the solution so they're not ready to fire us like that manager was. Okay? And again, involve people. Sometimes we're in such a hurry we fail to involve the right people. If you do that right, you still have to plan and fully implement permanent solutions and controls to sustain the gains. And also ask, where else can we copy these solutions? I will point out with this, we assume just because we put a solution in place that's good, everyone's going to follow it. Doesn't happen that way. And by the way, management's very interested in your problem or your improvements until you solve them. Where does their attention then go? To the next problem. And guess what? They take the rest of us with them. If they're not willing to follow up on sustaining the gains and putting in systems to monitor slippage, would you detect slippage? It's going to happen, guaranteed. It just will. So we want to involve management. So remember we said someone walks into your office? You do this tomorrow, right? You're going to start using DMAIC tomorrow. Someone walks into your office and says, we have a problem. We need to, how do you respond? They're going to say, we need to do this. You're going to say, whoa, 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 whoa. Don't give me, we've trained people, right? Don't bring me your problem, bring me solutions. I want you to change that slightly. Okay? So you say, define, what is the problem? Don't give me the cause, don't give me the solution. What's the current situation? How are we going to measure success? How do we know this is success? Okay, now give me the causes of the waste. Now give me the solutions. But don't just give me one. I want to know all the causes you considered and all the solutions you considered, including little or no spending of money, including doing nothing. Okay? Can we test or pilot your solution before we go to full-scale implementation? What is our plan for full-scale implementation? What are we going to do to sustain the gains? And just because one person comes into your office, how many of you sitting there saying, boy, I wonder who else I need to talk to before I jump to their solution? Or do we say, that sounds good, go ahead and do it. And then people are coming back saying, manager, you don't understand the current process. You don't understand what it did to us. You didn't involve us. So we got to be careful. Okay? So tomorrow you start thinking DMAIC. You're firefighting in a problem in a machine or a process. What should you be thinking? DMAIC. What's the problem? Okay? Wait, don't give me the solution yet. What is the problem? Same set of questions. And who else should we involve? Okay, same things. What about 5S? Turns out Lean doesn't have a constant structure for the events. 5S, quick changeover, flow improvement. Guess what? DMAIC works fabulous for that kind of stuff. Here's 5S laid out in the DMAIC framework. Okay? What's the control phase in 5S?
Standardize.
Standardize and sustain, right? Analyze, you're sorting, improving, set in order, shine, that kind of stuff. Measure. A lot of us do 5S just based on a checklist. You're not going to sustain it that way. What improvements did the 5S make? Do you do things faster? Do you use less floor space? Is there less, things of that nature? You'll sustain it that way. Quick changeover, same thing. You can use the DMAIC framework. The 4-step method, document setup, that's the baseline, the current process. Separate internal into external, or separate it. Convert internal to external, that's your improvement. So DMAIC works well with everything. I don't do a lean, every lean event, every lean activity I do, anytime people ask me to do stuff, they don't have to know DMAIC, but I'm following it. Okay? Could doctors use DMAIC? Sure. Car mechanics, others. They may not say they're using it, but guess what? DMAIC helps us remember the core steps that we said we should all take for good problem solving. They have the same elements. Why can't we use it every day? Why can't we coach others to use it, right? We can train people in DMAIC even if they don't know what it is. Hey, can you define the problem for me? First. We can take them through the steps. They'll learn it over time. So, to kind of wrap up, remember the pitfalls. And customers in our own organizations overload us with issues and opportunities. And again, this is another discussion we can have. We all tend to work on too many problems at once. If I ask you how many problems and tasks you're currently working on, I'll bet you might say 5, 10, 15. I can tell you that's a recipe for problem solving failure. It really is. Before you get another problem solved, I was talking to a company. I said, well, how long do you have to solve the problem? They said a day, 5 days max before the next problem is being handed to us. Okay, so we never get problems solved. All of this leads to the pitfalls. It's our human nature too to jump to the solution, jump to the cause. And maybe, so we say focus, be aware of the pitfalls, coach and develop others. Using plan, do, check, act, using DMAIC. Make DMAIC and plan, do, check, act the way you and others think, ultimately. And you can begin tomorrow. You guys already know DMAIC. Most of you know it. What does define mean? This is the audience participation part of the...
The ball is in the bag.
No. Define the... Amber, thank God, one of you got it. Have I been talking about define the problem, right? You got to remember it for tomorrow, right? What does measure mean?
Analyze.
No. Baseline and understand the current process. Pull out you put this on your desk tomorrow. You just have to read the first lines. Until you remember it, okay? Measure, baseline, and understand the current process. Analyze for root causes or lean wastes, things of that nature. Improve. Identify and can we pilot the solution or solutions first on a small scale. And by the way, with analyze and improve, we want to know all the potential root causes before we begin to select them. All the solutions before we pick them. But then we've still got to do control, which is we pilot it and improve. And often we want to get permission after the pilot to go to full-scale improvement. We want management in the boat with us if it sinks after full scale. So we go to with the pilot, we say, here's the pilot, you're seeing what we're seeing, let's go to full-scale implementation. If the boat sinks, it's not our fault, it's they were in the boat with us. All right? So we go to full-scale implementation and we have to put in controls to sustain the gains, right? So, problem solving and improvement can and does happen every day. You can do better. You guys are experts at this stuff. But you can do better. I can do better. We all succumb to these pitfalls. Plus, we're short on time. You can help others do better. If you are truly an expert, then prove it and help others get better. We don't just want them coming to us with the problems. We do want them coming with some root causes. And we challenge, when people come to you with problems and other things, let's lead them through the structure. But sometimes they'll say, what do you think we should do? And what do you do?
Suggest things.
Suggest things. What should you do next time if you want to train them? No. What do you think we should do? And help them come up with those things. That's how you're training them. Okay? If you give them a solution, you're training them to bring you all their problems. Okay? But you need structure. What are the only two things, and even if you're doing 8D, think DMAIC. You're doing A3. I know Pepsi in Brazil uses DMAIC in their A3 as part of their A3. So the two approaches, DMAIC and plan, do, check, act. Plan the change, the measure of success. Do it, see how it works, make your adjustments, right? Those are the only two approaches that I know worldwide, and I mean worldwide, that people can remember. The only two. And that was kind of a aha for me, and I was like, we ought to be thinking that way from the time we get up, dealing with problems, to the time we go to bed, okay? You may be stuck in traffic. Okay, you say to yourself, okay, what's the problem? What's the current situation? If I swerve in front of this car that's coming at 90 miles an hour, you know, could it cause things to get worse? Or do I want to jump to solution? My wife scares me to death half the time, but she likes to weave it out. But she's luckily not been in an accident, so. But you need structure. You need that structure. So tomorrow I want you guys thinking DMAIC, plan, do, check, act. And my favorite quote, if you see my signature line, you'll see it. If you leave work today the same as yesterday, no improvement in your organization has happened. And I would challenge you, don't just think about solving big problems, but solving lots of little ones. And all of a sudden you'll realize the big problems are starting to go away. So with that, I conclude. I'll stick around if you have any questions. I'd love to come back and talk to you about things like how to get more problems solved in less time. How do you get employees coming up with 70 to 100 ideas with implementation? But anyway, I hope you guys are all experts. It's tough to come talk about problem solving, make it interesting, and hopefully you picked up some tips and maybe some reminders of pitfalls we tend to all fall into. So I appreciate it. Have a safe trip home.